Hey Jules crew. So today I'm just going to talk through another groundwork session. Sorry, that's about all I post nowadays, but we've just really regressed with Buck and I'm trying to start completely over from scratch. So I've decided to just totally start over with him, pretend like he's never been broken before, and we're just starting from square one. For those of you who did not know, and for those of you who do know, I apologize if I sound like a broken record. But the issues I've been dealing with Buck is he completely spooks to lower leg aid, especially to the left side. If I put a lower leg on, he tends to tuck his hind end underneath himself and scooches really far and fast to the side. If he manages to get me unbalanced, then he typically bolts. And he's gotten me off twice, and one of the times he got me off, I hurt my hip and couldn't ride for about 2 weeks. So I was talking to my neighbor about it. We started back slow again since that bad fall, and some days I have really good riding days, and some days we just regress back to as soon as I put my lower leg on, he spooks out of nowhere with no warning. So I've gone through the motions of making sure it's not ulcers, making sure that it's not back pain, making sure his saddles fit him. And I think what's going on is when he was broken, he was probably broken with spurs, and he was probably spurred very hard, and he's genuinely afraid of left leg pressure. So that's what I'm dealing with. I was talking to my neighbor about it, and he let me borrow a Western saddle that had a horn in case I needed something extra to hold on to when he bolted, and he was 500 times worse in the Western saddle than with my English saddles. And I think it's because in a Western saddle, your lower leg doesn't really sit against the horse. Like I've been using a all-purpose saddle with shorter stirrups, and your lower leg just kind of constantly sits against the horse in that type of saddle. And then the Western saddle, since it doesn't sit against him all the time, as soon as I'd put a little bit of leg pressure on, it was just an exaggerated effect. And I know you can see here I'm very aggressive with my whip. This is not a long whip, it's a short whip, so no, I'm not actually touching him at all. It's just the sound. He gets to be pretty lazy and does not listen very well to some of my verbal cues. And sometimes I have to be a little more aggressive with my body language than I would like to be. If you would like to see some more of the groundwork that I've been doing with him, I'll put a card up here above, but this is just a quick voiceover of how I usually start with him. We do walk, trot, canter, both directions. I have him going over poles. I have him extend his trot, collect his trot, and then also change direction, all to voice commands. He knows the voice commands. Sometimes he's a little stubborn, and sometimes he's very slow and lazy, and I just have to be a little more aggressive with my cues on the ground. He is starting to get better about that, but if it looks pretty aggressive in this video, I also sped the video up times 1.5, so it's a little more exaggerated looking than in real life. But anyway, so I've decided to totally restart him, just go back to square one, pretend like he's never had a rider on his back. He's pretty good with the tack. You can tack him up without issue. He's pretty good lunging with the tack on and not bucking and bolting around like that. So we're just going from, I'm going to pretend like he's just tack broken and not rider broken and go from there. And before I get some lovely commentary about how flattering my outfit is, it was hot as Hades this day, and these are the coolest pair of riding tights that I own. And I thought the bright colors would also help you be able to see what I'm doing in the distance here. And I am very, very well aware of my big fat butt. I'm working on that, trying to lose some weight, and this is actually what I was doing right before this session. I've been doing the daily burn program at home, and I highly recommend it. They have different instructors every single day, and today was kickboxing. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, here I am working on some more ground cues. We're backing from the ground and then asking him to move his front end and then his hind end from the ground. And the way you do this, and also change direction as well. And the way you do this is you just Here I'm asking without manual pressure, and then I ask with manual pressure. And he's a little sticky with the manual pressure. I'm actually putting it through the stirrup and having it be where my leg would be. So you do pressure, and he's better with the front end, as you can tell. But anyway, you do pressure until you get what you want. So here he is moving his hind end well, and then when I apply the manual pressure, he's just moving all 4 feet instead of just the hind end. So I apply the pressure and then release the pressure once I get what I wanted. So it applies to the front side and the back side. I'm trying to put my manual pressure with the butt of my whip where my foot would be and get him used to learning that this pressure is nothing to shy at. It means, you know, kind of move away from the pressure. And then I'm asking him to change direction. I do this by opening my leading hand and then asking from behind for him to move forward. And he's a little bit confused about me having him on this short rope. And then here I'm asking him to yield from a distance, and I do that by crouching down and focusing on his hind end. And I have some more videos with that I'll put a card up here for. So as you can see, he's a little sticky with the manual pressure. We haven't worked with the manual pressure as much as we've done yielding the hind end from a distance. So we're just going right back down to the basics where I apply manual pressure until he moves his hind end or his front end. And here he's standing still, and I'm taking the fender and the stirrup of the saddle and just flapping it all around. And he's very good about this. I also took my rope and flapped it around. I'd cut that out because it was kind of boring because he just stood there. So I just want him to stand perfectly still and not get concerned and not lift his head up and not get worried, and he does very well. But as you can see here in a moment, what horses do from a standstill and what they do when their feet are moving can be two different, very drastic things. So here's an example of what he does when I'm on him. So what I'm asking him to do is just to continue to walk forward, and then I'm taking that left fender and that left stirrup like we just did from the halt, and I'm just kind of flapping it around. I'm not beating him, I'm not whipping him with it. I'm very lightly just kind of flapping it around, making a lot of noise, tapping it against his side. And he's just very resistant to it, very spooky to it, not too excited about it at all. And this is why I'm going back to the ground. I'm not going to get back on his back until we can walk all around with me on both sides, flapping these fenders about without him freaking out. He should be calm as could be. He should keep his head nice and low. He shouldn't look worried in his eyes. His body language should just be totally okay with it. So he gets better and better as we go along. I'm still going to do quite a few sessions just like this until I can do it very first try without him changing his gait or shying away from it, or even I don't really even want him to like pick his head up and have any worried eyes as well. He's not as bad to the right. He's a lot more sensitive to the left. He's still not super fond of it to the right. And I think my theory is he was probably spurred to the left and spun very quick when he was acting naughty or something, when he was broken. The place he came from was a real cowboy outfit. They had him in a big bit with a port, and they rode in big spurs. And I mean, you can probably just imagine the tactics they use to break horses. So we're just going back to square one. So I just do this over and over again. And then I take the halter off, and I have I kept the halter on with this in case I needed it, but I took his reins apart. And what I'm doing is I'm holding a little contact with the rein and then pressing with the stirrup. So I'm trying to give him the cue of these are your bending aids. You bend to the inside around the leg, and you give your head to a little pressure on the bit. So I did that going both ways. He did fairly well. And then we ended this little exercise. I have him step over a ground pole, and he's straddling the ground pole, and then I'm asking him to leg yield across the ground pole. So he does it better going towards the right than he does going towards the left. The way I get him to figure it out, you first have to have a horse that will move its front end and move its hind end independently, like I showed you a little earlier. So I'm asking for the front to move, and when he gives me a little bit of motion, I quit and then ask for the hind end to move. So asking for the front to move again, and then I ask for his hind to move again. So he's doing pretty well. I'm just trying to give him some little exercises to think about. We'll do a couple more sessions like this before I get on. I will share our journey with you. Please like, please subscribe. Hope you guys are having a lovely ride yourselves. Bye. Love you guys.